All right, so in this week's lesson, we're going to be talking about triads and how powerful they can be when it comes to playing lead. So everything that I played in the intro, that little blues composition, was played using triads and diminished triads. We're also going to work those into this. But that was all played on the top 3 strings. So I didn't use the bottom 3 strings on purpose just to eliminate variables. It's going to help really hit home the point that I'm trying to make here with these triads and how you can use them as visual anchors when you're playing lead. So I've got this lesson split into 2 parts. In this video, we're going to go through the first half of everything I played as well as all the instruction behind it. If you'd like to learn the second half and download the tablature and also access the on-screen tab viewer, which is interactive, you can get those things by going to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page and do a search for EP432. All right, so the first thing I should mention is what a triad is. A triad is just a chord with 3 notes. So if I'm playing an A triad, it looks like that. It's the 3 notes that make up the chord. That's all a triad is. So there's a triad of an A chord. That's a triad of an A chord. That's a triad of an A chord. Now that's the same A chord, the same 3 notes are just put in different orders. Those are called inversions. So that's what we're going to be looking at is these triads, and we're going to use them as visual anchors. Even though I'm not playing them like this, like all together in unison, like strumming a chord, those notes are still very important because they're target tones. They're sort of little anchors that I can go to when I'm playing a lead. So you can think of them that way as well. All right, so this blues that we're going to be playing is in the key of A. And we're going to look at this phrase by phrase and dissect them in pieces. I'm going to do this a little different than I normally do. Normally I go really specific into the notes. I'm going to kind of breeze through that a little bit. I will put them up on the screen with tab so that you can go through those and learn those at your own pace. And obviously, if you're a premium member, you'd have access to the slow walkthrough and the on-screen tab viewer and all that. But I want you to just get the instructional part of this in this video. And so as we go through this first phrase, that's the piece that I'm playing. And when I played that, I'm picturing 2 triads. I'm picturing the A triad like this, and I'm also picturing the A6 triad. And I'll explain that in just a minute. But those are the 2 pieces that I'm seeing. And every note that I played there is in one of those 2 triads. You can also think of this as A major pentatonic scale, pattern 2. So pattern 1, pattern 2, right? You can think of it that way as well. Same notes are in both of those. But when I look at the notes in this triad, by the way, that triad is just the top part of your A major bar chord. Using the E shape, it's just the top part of that. And when I played this, I slid into strings 1 and 2 on that 5th fret. And then 7th fret, 5th fret on the 2nd string. Now this 7th fret is that note that's in your A6 chord. So if I'm playing an A6, it sounds like this. Now the point of confusion for a lot of people is when they look at this, some people go, okay, that's a 6 chord, fine. And then some people go, no, it's not. It's a minor chord. That's an F sharp minor chord. And it is. You're right. But in both cases, it's if I put an A in the bass, it's an A6. If I put an F sharp in the bass, it's an F sharp minor. You can hear how it changes color just by changing that bass note. And so the thing to remember is, this will be your big takeaway, F sharp minor is the relative minor of A. Some of you are going, oh, wait a minute. So you got an A chord, and then your relative minor is F sharp minor. So what I mean by that, the takeaway part is, anytime there's an A chord that's being played in a jam track or with a band, or even if you're just playing by yourself, as long as you have an A in the bass or the A is defined somehow, you can play an F sharp minor triad, and it's going to sound like an A6 chord. Because just remember, F sharp minor is the relative minor of A. So if I were to play it up here, you have that kind of Hawaiian sound, right? And that's because of the 6th chord. And so that's, here it is down here. Right, I'm just playing different triads, F sharp minor triads, but when you play them with the A in the bass, you're getting an A6 chord. Okay, so just wanted to get that out of the way. All right, so let's put the tab up on the screen for that. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, the next phrase we're going to learn goes like this. All All right, so in this little blues, we're still staying in the 1 chord. Now what I did here, the only thing to point out was coming up to this note, 9th fret, 1st string. And what I pictured was another triad. I pictured the A triad up here using the D shape. Even though I didn't play the full chord, I just needed this one note out of it. And so I was picturing that. See, when I look at the fretboard from my vantage point, it all lights up. When I'm playing over an A chord, I'm seeing A triads all over the place. They're just little stops on a bus line, or they're like neighborhoods. I can go to those neighborhoods and I can hang out for a while. If I'm down here around this triad, I've got things I can do down here, right? And so that's what lead playing becomes to me, is it's just finding chord shapes like this that you can use as anchor points. So when I came up to this note, I went, and I slid into that. Now some of you will notice that this note was not in one of the triads, but just remember this rule of thumb. If you're going between 2 frets, you can always play the note in between. That's called chromatically playing. And that's just a little passing tone to get you to the next tone. So if you've got 2 frets that you're playing and there's a fret, an empty fret in between, just play it. You don't always want to do it, but from time to time, it sounds pretty good. And it sort of, you know, it makes it sound a little jazzier, I guess, to do it that way. So you can think of your pentatonic scales and maybe just practice with that. You've got lots of spaces in between, right? You don't want to overdo it. I was probably overdoing it there, but you get my point. Okay, so let's put that tab up on the screen. All right, so far we have. Now listen to this. This is where it gets out of the box. Just for that one little moment, I kind of stepped out of the box a little bit. And what's going on there, this is the half step, whole step scale. And that's a diminished scale. It's actually called a double diminished scale, I believe. But that's a scale that you can use over a dominant chord. Anytime you've got a dominant chord, like a 7 chord, think of it that way. So here's the thing, that this is the point of confusion, or at least it was for me, until all of a sudden it just sort of, I got it. When you're going from the 1 chord to the 4 chord, think about it this way. The 4 chord in this case is a D chord. Well, what is the 5 chord of a D chord? Just ask yourself that. Forget the key that we're in and all that. What is the 5 chord of a D chord? Well, the 5 chord of a D chord is an A chord. Wait a minute, we were just on an A and we're going to the D. So in actual fact, A is the 5 chord of D, or you could say it this way, your 1 chord is the 5 chord of your 4 chord. I realize I may be stepping into it that way, but just think about that. Just think of the logic behind that. Your 1 chord in a blues is the 5 chord of your 4 chord. So what that means then is I can treat that 1 chord as a dominant chord, so I can play the half step, whole step scale. That's a scale that you play over dominant chords. And so that's your half step, whole step scale. That's another lesson for another day. But this little piece of it is just a little element stepping out of the box for a minute. So here's the tab for that. Now notice when I walked up to this, it almost resolved. It sounded out of bounds. But then once you come to this, even though there's not a jam track underneath you, you kind of instinctively know where we're at in the song. That's going to the 4 chord. And what I was picturing was this D chord using, it's just a D, obviously it's a triad there, but I'm picturing this shape. And I think of this in the cage system as like the top part of your A shape. And it's right there in the same neighborhood we've been in. But when you arrange it this way, you're playing a D chord. And all I did from here was go, just trace the notes right out of that arpeggio. That's why it makes sense when you heard me play that without anything underneath it. That's why you kind of knew where we were in the song. It was because I was spelling out the chord. All right, so after we play the D, watch this. That's another diminished chord. Now what I'm playing there is the 4 sharp diminished. Now I've talked about this in other lessons. Anytime you've got a 4 chord, and you're going back to the 1 chord, you can play the 4 chord, the 4 sharp diminished to get you back to the 1. And you can feel that. There's your tension and back to the 1. I don't have to do that. I could just stay in the D, right? You just do this and then back to the 1. You can do that, but it doesn't have as much tension as this. It's just much more tense. And so when I played this, that's the 4 sharp diminished. Now here's a little cheat for you so that you can get to this quickly. All I'm doing is I'm looking at this triad, and then if you look at these 2 notes stay the same, but then you take in this case it would be the 7th fret 3rd string, and you just go up 1. Remember 4 sharp diminished? There's your D note. We're going to go 4 sharp. There's the sharp. These 2 notes stay the same. Listen. So anytime you want to get at that easily in arpeggio form like this, that's how I like to do it. I find myself using this quite a bit. So think about that in terms of your lead playing. You're playing like your minor pentatonics and stuff, and then you get to the 4 chord. Right? And you can hear it going 4 sharp diminished, and then back to the 1. And so it's a real nice little tension thing. So that's just how you can easily do it. Just slide up 1 in that triad. And the way that I played this, and this works with any diminished chord, you can always play them. You can go up 3 frets and play the same notes in the same order. Well, it's the same fingering rather. And it goes this way as well. And so that's what I played. I went. Actually, I slid that. I went. And came up to this position. All right, so here's the tab for that part. Okay, from the beginning then, it sounds like this. Right? And now we're going back to the 1 chord. Right there. So what I'm doing here is I'm sliding up to the 9th fret, from the 8th to the 9th fret on the 1st string, 12th fret, and then back to the 9th fret. And then watch this. Now that's the big takeaway in this part. So remember, we went back to the 1 chord. So this is dancing around a little bit. The obvious is this. That's the thing that I was going for. And what is that? Let's look at these notes. Sounds very sad. Sounds like a minor chord. Wait, where have we heard this before? Right? It is. It's the F sharp minor triad. But remember, if you're playing it with an A in the bass, or the intention is an A behind it, even though there's not a band here, there's this sort of defined thing, that's the 1 chord. So then that becomes the A6 chord, just like we did in the beginning. This, adding that 6th interval. Here it is again up here. So that's an A6. All right, here's the tab for that. Okay, so all that's left of the song is we go from the E, which is our 5 chord, to the D, and then back to the 1. So for that 5 chord, for the E, I went. Since I was already up here, right? We were playing the A6. And then watch this. All I did was bar on the 9th fret, the first 3 strings, and then put my ring finger on the 10th fret 1st string. So it's 3, 2, 1, 3, 1, 1. And this, you can connect this to your A shape. This will be a light bulb for some of you. Some of you have heard me say this before. If you're thinking of your A chord shape out of the cage system, I'm playing an E chord but using the A shape. Look at where my pinky is. If I bar where my pinky was, I can play the dominant 7 version of that same chord. E, E7. Same is true down in first position. There's your A chord, here's your A7, right? It's the same shape, we're just playing it up here. So hopefully you can see that now. You're starting to see the cage thing. Oh, okay, I'm just repurposing all this first position stuff. I'm just playing it up here. So I did that, and then I walked that down 2 frets. You can always take your 5 chord, whatever you're doing over the 5 chord, and go 2 frets down this way and make it work over your 4 chord. So this would be your D. Right, there's your D chord using the A shape. Here's your D7. And the way that I played that, I just went 3, 2, 1. Just play that little piece of it. And then watch this. Back to that sharp diminished 7. It's the same one we played before. Because I'm using the same rule. Remember, when you're going from the 4 chord to the 1, even in this case where we're going 5, 4, 1, I'm still going 4 to the 1. So that means I can go 4, 4 sharp diminished, 1. And that's what I'm doing here. So I went, actually, no, I played it, the D7, and then the D sharp diminished 7, and then back to your A. And then I tagged it with a little lead lick at the end. So that's 8th fret, 7th fret, 5th fret on the first string. And that's just, I'm still kind of thinking of, in this case, I'm thinking minor pentatonic for that note. But then I go into the major pentatonic scale pattern too. 7th fret, that's that A6 note. And then, so we're back down to the 5th fret, 3rd string, 6th fret, and then 5th fret, 2nd string. So all together that like, and then watch this. There's your 5 chord. But I went up to the E7 that we already played. I started at a half step up and then slid down to it. And the reason I did that, I wanted to stay on those top 3 strings. Now, normally I would come down and go and do something like that. That's also an E7. But I'm trying to simplify just to get us thinking about triads. And I think it's just easier if we're just limited to those top 3 strings. Now, if you're a premium member, you have access to the on-screen tab viewer and those other things, like I've mentioned before. And if you're not a premium member, you should look into it. I've got lots and lots, 10 years worth of in-depth lessons like this on various topics. And we just do deep dives on different topics, roots-based music, country, blues, rock. There's a little bit of jazz mixed in there. The good stuff, in my opinion. All right, I'm going to back up and play through this one more time so that you have another final playthrough of the first half. And remember to join us in the second half where we go over a whole other piece to this. And you have a whole composition that you can play through and practice. All right, we'll see you in part 2 just after this. 1, 2, 3, 4.